Now, the first item on the program is an introductory talk by yours truly. Just a glance at the headlines from recent times is enough to show that we are living in a very unique period of division and polarization. Surveys show that the partisan split in America is the highest it's been in decades, and polls revealed a sharp spike in the contempt that people express for their opponents, political and otherwise. We have, in recent times, become accustomed to incendiary rhetoric in the public space. Name-calling, insults, bullying have become commonplace, replacing the professionalism and civility that we normally associated with positions of leadership. And partisans fending off this culture of incivility maintain dogmatic opposition and distrust in their attitudes towards others. I think this cartoon is a pretty accurate portrayal of the current political climate. I think this one's pretty good too. And much of this division we know is manufactured and then exploited for political purposes, appealing to people's fears and anxieties, especially through the proliferation of misinformation. There are those who purposefully tap into racial, ethnic, and religious demarcations, trying to pit one faction against the other. And Muslims have been one of the groups affected in various ways as part of such schemes. We hear statements about Muslims as if they are one monolithic assembly, generalizing the acts of terrorists to all 1.5 billion adherents. We see certain policies being instituted that are directly aimed at treating persons from Muslim-majority countries differently, sending a message as to who is welcome in America. And these statements have far-reaching effect. They impact the views of the citizenry and unfortunately give incentive to some who seek opportunities to freely act out deep-seated prejudices and bigotry. This map shows incidents in which mosques have been the target of attacks between January and March of 2017. There were 35 incidents during this 3-month period, ranging from vandalism with spray painting of hate speech to arson and the complete destruction of the property. If you're able to tell, Columbus was not spared. And this does not really come close to the reality of incidents against individual Muslims. Typically Muslim women being harassed and having their headscarves pulled off, and the phrase, "go back to your country," being yelled at even Muslim school children who were obviously born in America. But what is probably, I think, the most sinister way in which Muslims have been exploited for political purposes in recent times is by making the term Muslim a slur that is used as an insult as part of a smear campaign to demean a political opponent. This was one of the most popular attacks made against President Obama, claiming that he was in fact a Muslim, which meant he was associated with all of the negative connotations that certain groups were attaching to that word. And notably, it was General Colin Powell, someone from the other side of the political aisle, to publicly change the narrative of the discussion from whether President Obama was a Muslim or not to what if he was. Similarly, it was the late Senator John McCain, while campaigning for president on behalf of the Republican Party, who defended then-candidate Obama in a town hall meeting as a decent family man, when a lady referred to him as an Arab, who probably meant Muslim, but nonetheless was referring to her distrust of him and questioning his patriotism. But what I imagine was an unintended consequence of this campaign is the alliance that was formed by people of assorted backgrounds. Like in this image of a banner of a new restaurant. I mean, come on, when were you able to get your burritos and falafel at the same place? But in all seriousness, I think people are just tired. They're tired of all the discord and animosity. They're tired of the degradation of public discourse. And they're tired of the lack of respect shown to others in society. It reminds me of the words of the character John Coffey in The Green Mile. He said, "I'm tired, boss. Mostly I'm tired of people being ugly to each other." So, what we would like to first do today is to present some basic principles from a religious perspective on how to restore civility and religious harmony in society. And the foundation for this is found in the simple yet central notion of respect. Showing respect is really the foundation for any harmonious relationship, whether it is between individuals, communities, or even nations. It is a simple concept, one that we learn as children. Unfortunately, as adults, we tend to choose who we believe is worthy of respect. And oftentimes, it is society and popular culture that dictates this for us. Celebrities, the rich, the powerful, the famous, and even the infamous. These are the types of people that we are commonly presented as being worthy of respect. Religion, however, teaches us something different. Religion teaches us that we are to see the value in everyone. Respecting others is considered a noble attribute. And this applies especially to those who are not famous and powerful. The poor, the weak, the refugee, the underrepresented and marginalized members of society. Giving respect to such persons is in fact considered a sign of true character. Now, I would like to briefly share with you 3 ways in which this concept of respect for others is presented from the Islamic tradition. The first is a general principle of respect for all people as though mankind is one family. The Holy Quran, the religious scripture of Islam, teaches that all of humanity is one, and therefore all people are equal and deserve equal respect. It states all mankind is a single nation. It also states that all people have descended from the same parents and are like dwellers of one home, having the same earth as a resting place and the same sky as a roof. And this concept of mankind being like one family was beautifully explained by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam. In his book titled Message of Peace, he addresses the issue of intolerance and disrespect, often shown by people of different faiths towards one another. He writes, "Friends, ponder for God's sake and say whether such beliefs are acceptable to reason, whether there is anything in human conscience which responds to them. I cannot see how a rational being can believe, on the one hand, that God is the Lord of the whole universe, and yet say on the other that he has withdrawn his fostership and care from the greater part of the world, and that his love and mercy is confined to one people and one country. Our God has not withheld his bounty from any people. The powers and faculties which he bestowed on the ancient peoples of India have also been bestowed on the Arabs, the Persians, the Syrians, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Europeans, and the Americans. For all of them, the earth of God serves as a floor, and for all of them, his sun, moon, and stars give light. All of them derive benefit from the air, water, fire, earth, and other things created by God, and all of them use the produce of the earth. These liberal ways of God teach us that we too should do good to all mankind and should not be narrow-minded nor limit our respect for anyone. Correspondingly, diversity among people is understood in Islam as a means of betterment and progress for humanity, not a cause for prejudice and disunity. The Quran states, "O mankind, surely we have created you from a male and a female and made you tribes and nations so that you may know each other." The Quranic lesson is that differences in race, in national origin, and culture are not meant to divide, but rather to facilitate growth in humanity by learning from one another. It acknowledges that different people have different experiences from which others may learn, and that in respecting these differences lies much value and worth for humanity as a whole. The second way in which Islam advances respect for others, in particular respect for other religions, is by upholding the truthful origins of other faith traditions and the integrity of the holy founders of other religions. According to Islam, just as God provides for the material sustenance of all humanity, so too does He provide for all mankind's spiritual nourishment. And God has done this throughout history by raising prophets and messengers among all people on earth so that all people would be equally blessed with God's guidance. The Quran states, "For every nation there is a messenger." It also states, "There is not a people but a warner has gone among them." Prophet Muhammad is in fact recorded as saying there were 124,000 prophets in all. So the founders and religious personalities of the great religions of the world are respected in Islam as messengers of God. It is understood that they were sent to specific people under particular conditions for their guidance in spiritual revival. These holy personalities taught great truths and were role models of morals and virtues to their people. And when we see so much commonality between the different faith traditions, we understand why. Because they originated from the same source. And the message was essentially the same: believe in God and do good to others. And finally, the third way that I will discuss in which Islam furthers the concept of respect for others is by teaching that every single person has the Spirit of God within them and is therefore inherently holy. According to Islam, like in other religions, we are not simply physical beings, but also spiritual ones too. And that is because each one of us has a soul. And we're told in the Quran that our soul is in fact the Spirit of God breathed into us. Now, the Spirit of God within us means that each one of us possesses the divine attributes. Just as God is loving, compassionate, merciful, forgiving, so too does every human being possess these attributes within them. And exercising these qualities, being loving towards others, being compassionate and merciful in one's daily interactions, and forgiving others for their faults and mistakes is what develops these attributes and makes one closer to God. As an analogy, the Quran likens the soul to a seed. Just as a seed has certain qualities inherent in it that if cultivated properly can grow into a garden, so too does the soul possess the divine attributes that, if developed suitably, can lead to the spiritual garden of heaven. And appreciating the divine existence within others is a natural antidote to bigotry and intolerance. It is very difficult to hate another or to cause harm to another when you understand that every person has the divine within them. Differences, whether religious or political or even social or cultural, do not rise to the level of considering others to be of no worth or value when you believe they possess the same fundamental spiritual essence as you. History bears witness to the fact that it is some belief in some inherent superiority of one group over another, whether it is a belief in a chosen people or in racial supremacy, or a national exceptionalism that has been the root cause of wars and genocides and bloodsheds from the beginning of time. Now, I'm sure the points that I have just relayed are relatable to lessons on respect and other faith traditions. These are universal truths, and they're self-evident. Yet despite their conventional appeal, it is difficult to find them being practiced. So, our next presentation will identify and outline some practical guidance on how to apply these general lessons so as to restore civility in society and religious harmony. Which brings me to the close of my introduction. I thank you for your kind attention.